You know, we'll get there. I want to start with some good news first. Okay? Let's start with the good news, folks. Folks, we're actually doing pretty okay when it comes to trans rights. The tide, I think, is beginning to turn in a way that is frankly inescapable even for the most die-hard conservative figures. And like, I know that might seem weird right now, but there's a couple things coming out that really seem to me like the tide is turning. Okay? And one of those is a new poll that released today, highlighted by Ari Drennan on Twitter. Thank you, Ari. Basically, this was done by GLAAD, and it shows that basically everyone hates when conservative politicians fixate on trans people and trans issues. Conservatives want their politicians to be focusing on things like tax cuts for, them. And what they're seeing is not that. Instead, they're seeing their, elected officials or prospective elected officials getting up and talking about how there are only two genders. Kind of pulling a Haas, an infrared Haas, but about genders instead of holes. And it's really irritating them, actually. So let's just take a look here. Recent survey provides evidence that political attacks on transgender youth and their parents are widely viewed by registered voters in the United States as a misguided overreach by Republican politicians. This sentiment is particularly notable among swing voters who will decide pivotal national, state, and local elections in 2024, and even among strong Republican voters. Candidates who frequently discuss restrictions on transgender youth are alienating swing voters and creating more opposition than support for their campaigns. By a more than 2-to-1 margin, registered voters, likely 2024 voters, and swing voters state that they are more motivated to oppose a candidate who speaks frequently about restricting access to healthcare and sports for transgender youth than to support that candidate. Notably, candidates speaking about restrictions on transgender youth fails to motivate support even among Trump voters. And here's: suppose a political candidate speaks frequently about restricting access to healthcare and participation in sports for transgender youth. Would this strongly motivate you to support the candidate? Somewhat motivate you to support the candidate? Somewhat motivate you to oppose the candidate? Strongly motivate you to oppose the candidate? It is very interesting that the total motivated to oppose a conservative candidate among Trump voters is evenly split. Trump voters are evenly pushed towards opposing and supporting a candidate that is speaking about trans issues and restrictions on trans folks. This is great news, guys. Among swing voters, if a candidate is talking about opposing trans rights, over half of them are motivated to oppose that candidate among swing voters. This is phenomenal news. This is phenomenal news. And I'm just really grateful that we get to know this, and that, again, Ari Drennan, excellent reporter for Media Matters, is highlighting this. It's really amazing. The poll also shows that voters overwhelmingly think that politicians should focus on cost of living issues and leave healthcare decisions to doctors and families. Decisions about healthcare for transgender youth are best left to parents in consultation with physicians and mental health professionals. 73% of Trump voters agree with that, and 83% of swing voters agree with that. The fact that this exists is incredible. Post a link. Here you go. So, I want you guys to know that even though it might not seem like we're winning and it might not seem like we're making progress, we absolutely are. We absolutely are making progress. One of the interesting things here is that Channel 4 recently, and I know that people are like get really down on media in like the UK and Australia, like being turf islands over here. But it's worth noting that like even in hostile environments, issues about trans people are breaking through the cultural barrier into the mainstream. Here's from a Channel 4 drama series called I think Hollyoaks. Hollyoaks? Yes.
It'll be okay. Just take it one step at a time.
I don't know what the first step is. I'm a boy, but my body's all wrong, and how am I supposed to tell my parents that?
I'll help you in whatever way I can. But you need to know that your life is in your hands. So stop bunking off school. And then, and only then, you can start thinking about how and when you can tell your mum. Rose, you can't move on with your life until you've told the people you love who you truly are. That is, if you're sure.
I'm so sure.
Well, then once you've taken the first step, you can start actually being who you truly are. It's the best feeling in the world.
Like, that's pretty great, you know? Is that Philosophy Tube? I genuinely no idea if that's Philosophy Tube or not. But I also came across this article in the Boston Globe here called A Huge Misconception About Medical Care for Trans Kids. This is a really good article. I'm not going to go over the entire thing here, but I am going to post it in chat for you guys. And this is written by Meredith McNamara, and it starts off, as a pediatrician who serves youth with gender dysphoria, I think the broader public is wrongly being led to believe that treatments are impulsive or incautious. And again, the entire article is very, very, very much worth reading, but I wanted to focus on these last two paragraphs here. Nationwide data on youth gender treatments show that the careful approaches I see in my practice are the norm. Although the number of youths diagnosed with gender dysphoria has been increasing in recent years, the proportion of them who receive medically affirming care appears to be roughly the same. Roughly the same. In 2017, 4% of those aged 6 to 17 with the diagnosis of, again, gender dysphoria received puberty-pausing medications. In 2021, the figure was 3%, according to an analysis by Reuters. 13% with this diagnosis received hormones in 2017. In 2021, the figure was 10%. When I tell my patients that the best is yet to come, I do so with caution because their stories increasingly have something else in common: the threat of political interference. 23 states have now banned the care that helped bring Lane and Max's bodies into alignment with their true selves. The benefits of gender-affirming care can have drawn more transgender youth into the light, only to generate public fear and scrutiny. I may despair at this societal bait and switch, but my patients carry on. They adjust their college application strategies to avoid half the country and build protective communities. The truth is that that politicization and public scrutiny make this care harder to obtain, but don't make it any less effective. They also don't change who Lane, Max, or any transgender person is. And like this is beautiful, right? Because all of this hysteria, all of the hysteria about trans people is this idea that more and more children are being diagnosed with gender dysphoria. Where will it end? A slippery slope. Soon we'll be transing the dogs. And like the reality is, the percentage of kids that are receiving treatment is staying relatively the same. There's no, this, and I know that we knew on some level that this was all, like, we know, we on the left, we knew that this was like hysteria over nothing. But having the data points and like the testimony of a full-on like medical doctor who is also an assistant professor of pediatrics at Yale, like calmly explaining to you that actually no, it is the same percentage of kids being treated for it now as 7 years ago. That's important. That's an important data point to have. File it away in the back of your brains. It's the evil left-handedness all over again. It really, really is. You know, there was a point at which I thought maybe like that analogy like wouldn't hold, but it really does seem to be like consistent in that regard, you know? And finally, I know that a lot of us have been doomering about Florida, but I wanted to highlight this piece of legislation, or not legislation, my goodness. This piece of journalism by Erin Reed, who does incredible journalistic work. I love Erin and her coverage, but this was incredible to see. Okay? The tide is turning. Dozens of anti-LGBTQ bills die in Florida. Over 20 anti-LGBTQ bills have died in Florida after the legislature adjourned Sindai on Friday, leaving some wondering if energy is waning over anti-trans and anti-LGBTQ legislation. Which, like, yeah, it is. Like, if you put together these two data points, and like the fact that like even Turf Island is getting on board with like trans people, the tide is turning here. And one of the things I think that is really important to note in this story by Erin Reed is the role that local on-the-ground organizing had in ensuring that these bills die. OS Crane, thank you for gifting Prancing Goldfish a sub.
HWITE name spotted. Re.
I appreciate it. Let's see here. The bills that have failed include H599, a bill that would have expanded Don't Say Gay policies to the workplace. It proposed banning government employees and any business with government contracts from sharing pronouns. Furthermore, it aimed to prohibit all nonprofits in the state from requiring education and training on LGBTQ+ issues, a significant issue for LGBTQ+ nonprofits, as one might imagine. Like, again, I would very much recommend you all check out Erin Reed's reporting here. We're not going to go through the entire thing, but like, these are significant bills that were left to die in the Florida legislature, because even though they have a massive amount of conservative support in Florida, they don't have enough support to pass legislation this heinous. And I wanted to just highlight this quote at the end here from people organizing in Florida. The momentum is undeniably shifting against extremism, Nadine Smith of Equality Florida said in a press release. Extremist groups are collapsing amidst multiple scandals. Parents are mobilizing on behalf of their kids, and to stop the dismantling of public education, we will build on this momentum and redouble our commitment to the fight. Together, we can put power back in the hands of the people. And that is how this article ends. And I think that is how this segment ends. Like, we have the power. We are not just passive bystanders to this. We can get involved. You can get involved on a local level. You can start knocking on doors, getting together with your neighbors, and do something about this today. You know? You do not have to just passively accept the cruelty and inhumanity that is thrust upon you by conservative lawmakers. And I think that's really, really important. And trans rights will win, friends. Trans rights will win. Trans rights now, trans rights forever, and solidarity forever. And with that, we are an hour into stream, folks. Make sure you hit the follow button on Twitch, hit the subscribe button on YouTube, like the YouTube stream, and please consider dropping those subs and donos that help me to continue functioning and making this content. Oh yeah, I started reaching out to LGBT groups today, and I'm going to get involved in the local community. Oh, Wes Crane, that's wonderful! By all means, share like your findings in your search with us on Discord and in the chat, because I'm sure other people would also like to get involved with the local orgs that you link up with. Absolutely. And as always, if people are looking for organizations to join, like I know people have differing opinions about the DSA, but like most of the stories I hear coming out of DSA and from the amazing organizers with the DSA in my very community, like Gamergy, it is an incredibly effective vehicle for local change. So yes, consider joining DSA, and also consider just organizing in the Discord with each other. I know that we're a small community, but we can, when we roll up our sleeves together, get shit done. And we've been doing it since 2022, and we're going to continue going forward. So, yeah, I told you, good news. Finally good news, you know?